What about now? Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go.
All right,
Yeah.
for sure. I think it's interesting because a lot of people on 49ers Twitter were like, "Oh, Jason Verrett coming in is gonna lock down the 49ers secondary. We're gonna be a better team because of it." I'm looking, I'm like, "Wait, we
I
talking
think
about the
it's
same?"
much more of like a sentimental signing than like
I
a
was looking at it.
actual
I'm like,
healthy.
"Wait, are we talking about the same as Jason Verrett? The Jason Verrett has who's torn his ACL 2 times and tore his Achilles 2 times on the same leg? Like, how do we know he's really back to himself? Like, we
Yeah.
haven't seen him since 2021. Um, and even in that year, it was one game, and it tore his ACL. I believe it was his ACL
Mhm.
that year, Achilles that year.
Mhm.
Um, but
Achilles.
looking at him, it might have been his Achilles. But looking at Jason Verrett, like he's a good player when healthy, but he's also on the back end of his career in the
Yeah.
upper age of NFL players. Once you hit
Yeah.
30,
He's in
you're
his
already you're already over the hump. Like you're no longer that. But then the injuries on top of it, I think it's a interesting signing. I think it's more so, can we catch lightning in a bottle? That's literally how
I
I
think
see it.
I saw it as, to be honest, I saw it as like a sentimental, and you would think that teams don't do this, but I feel like under Kyle Shanahan, who was the guy? He was I think he was a wide receiver, and then he turned into a tight end or something.
Jordan
He was
Matthews,
on Yeah, like, he was on the team for a long time. He would always go wait, I know he was the guy that Trey Lance threw to during his,
hmm
college thing, but he was always the guy that, was practicing with the different QBs in the offseason that Kyle Shanahan would go send to work with different people, and I feel like the 49ers, I think they kind of have this with Elijah Mitchell right now. I think they get these, like, players that, for lack of a better word, because I know this technically shouldn't exist because it is a business, but I do think that the 49ers have a little bit of this like loyalty family environment to certain guys. And I feel like they've had that with Jason Verrett because they've continued to bring him back regardless of his injuries, regardless of the amount of time that he's been able to play for them. And I kind of think that they feel I don't see him as someone that they think is that they're going to rely on in the playoffs. I think that they think, hey, we want to do right by this player because we like him. Kyle Shanahan really talked about, he said when he was working out that different players went and watched him work out. He talked about, and even a reporter asked about like the mental morale that he brings to the team. So I think Kyle Shanahan is like, hey, we can bring him in to be a guy in the room because all these younger guys will respect him. The
yep.
veterans already love him. He's going to be, we're going to do right by paying him, and he's going to be like a practice squad guy. He's kind of, that's the vibe I got from the press conference. To me, it didn't seem like Kyle was like crossing our fingers he's going to like show up in the playoffs for us. To me, it seemed like kind of something, obligation is not the right way to say it, but like something like this is
It was more so a
a
respect
morale
signing,
family
and I
guy.
get what you're
Yeah.
saying. And then the interesting, that's how kind of I saw it as more so a coach on the field. JV being that veteran who could coach up the young guys like Demo, Ambry Thomas, Luter, who definitely needs some knowledge from an old vet, who's a young rookie, Samuel Womack. So just definitely teaching up the young guys is definitely a key thing. And if you go back to look at Kyle, I think it's more so Kyle who keeps dudes that are close to him, right? Tevin Coleman, he brought him in. Tevin Coleman was around for a little while. Mohamed Sanu was around for a little while. He would sign him wherever he got cut. He would have him signed. So just looking at that, I think Dante Johnson, he was around for how many years, right? Like it's something that Kyle and the 49ers, they like having a good locker room, and I think that goes a long way for the 49ers. They understand if you have, um, for example, going towards basketball terminology, right? If you have David West in your locker room, you're not gonna have the young dudes acting up, not showing up for team meetings, being
Yeah.
late. You have the veteran. You're like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Like that's kind of the mentality that they're hoping Jason Verrett brings to the locker room, which he will. But I just thought it was interesting because I saw people on 49ers Twitter. They're like, oh, he's gonna change our secondary. I'm like, we're talking about the same player. Like, let's be real. He's 32 years old. He's coming off four major injuries to the same leg. Like, I don't see much from the Jason Verrett signing, but interesting. I see it more as interesting
Yeah.
signing.
That's how I felt too. It felt like news that wasn't news. And you're right. It was interesting that some fans like were like, "Oh, this is a huge deal." And I was like, I feel like this is going to be a very background move.